There are so many countless reasons to invest in Google stock. The company consistently puts up unbelievable financials, doing over $250 billion of revenue just last year alone, of which more than 76 billion of that went straight to net income profit, and yet they still managed to grow by double-digit percentages every single year, even after putting up over 40% growth last year. It is absolutely wild. And when people talk about investing in Google stock, for sure they think about the great valuation that they get right now because of the market downturn, with the stock having already lost about 40% of its entire value from the top, leaving their PEG ratio at not only 28% cheaper than their 5-year average, but it's also a massive 18% cheaper than the actual sector, despite their insane market leadership and flat out dominance, which, by the way, includes the most market share in maps, email with Gmail, browser with Chrome, the third most cloud computing market share with Google Cloud, and easily the most video streaming with YouTube that already has over 2.6 billion active users. That's more than half of all internet users. I mean, YouTube could be a giant social media empire just on its own. But you want to talk about internet users? Practically everyone that has ever logged onto the internet has used Google search, which still commands over 90% of the entire market after all these years. Literally, no one even comes close to that. And the list really just goes on from there for this giant behemoth of a company. But two areas that I personally feel are still criminally slept on in terms of how much added value and growth they can still bring to Google, I think those are Android and autonomous driving. What's up, everyone? My name is Ale. Welcome back to my world of stocks. As you probably already know, Google is the stock that I've been buying the most aggressively throughout the entire 2022 market downturn or crash, whatever you want to call it. But I've made lots of videos talking about the reasons why I've been buying Google the most out of really any other stock out there in the market, which is really due to a number of amazing things that Google does as a company that I think makes the stock a screaming buy, with some of the things that I just mentioned for you really only being a few of them. But I really feel that if we were to look for a differentiator in the stock right now, something that maybe investors are just not paying as much attention to as they should be, something that can still bring in even more added value and growth to the company despite their already massive size, well, I think the best shot of that being, I think it would be their autonomous driving division in Waymo and their smartphone business in Android. And the reason why I feel this way is because I think that Waymo has all the potential in the world to be sort of a smaller version of Tesla for Google, while Android can also be a smaller version of Apple for them as well. And when you take the combined market cap of those two companies, you're talking about a combined value there of over $3 trillion. So if Google can do even just a fraction of that type of performance in those specific markets, you're talking about an absolute game changer here for the stocks. A real differentiator that people may not be realizing, may not be paying enough attention to, or as much as they should be. So let's quickly dive into both of those, and I'll explain the reasons why I think that Google is really sitting on two giant gold mines here for the long term. When you look at the global autonomous vehicle market, according to Allied Market Research, it's expected to reach an absolutely mind-blowing over $2 trillion by 2030. That's trillion with a T. And it's on the back of over 40% compound annual growth per year, which is just crazy growth to think about. Now, the thing is that most of that value will come towards the tail end of that time frame, because semi-autonomous is usually the best you can get right now in most markets. But the great thing about Google is that they're already building one of the biggest head starts or leads in the market that people just don't really seem to be paying any attention to. Because when you think of autonomous driving, you mostly think of Tesla, for example. And for sure, Tesla is a monster in autonomy, especially with the millions of vehicles they already have out on the road that are constantly collecting billions of miles of data for them, which is then sent back to their neural network platform that uses it to create 3D renders of the world to better understand the roads and the driving conditions in real time. And it's incredible technology, and these vehicles can even communicate with each other. So the more vehicles that they get out on the road, the stronger the overall network becomes. Tesla is definitely way up there. I mean, here's an image from 2019 that Tesla showed of their vehicles collecting autonomous driving data as they populate the world. And that was back in 2019, and it already looked very impressive. So today it's likely much larger, especially in North America, Europe, and China. Tesla is no joke. There's also the Chinese company Baidu, who received the first ever robotaxi permits in China. There's GM's Cruise, who is exclusively launching a robotaxi service in Dubai next year. And even Nvidia, who provides AV hardware and software to major brands like Mercedes, Volvo, NIO, and more. But after that, the competition really starts to thin out. And given how massive this market is projected to be, Google's Waymo will likely be one of the most dominant players in the world, considering how much progress they've already made across public, commercial, residential, and even freight, with millions of miles driven on physical roads and billions through simulation. A few notable achievements also include partnering with Daimler Trucks in 2020, who is the largest freight truck manufacturer in the entire world, to provide them with autonomous functionality for transporting goods. The following year, they partnered with Chinese automaker Geely to develop autonomous fully electric minibuses for public transport in America. And earlier this year, they also partnered with Uber to develop autonomous semi-trucks for their freight division as well. They even partnered with the biggest physical retailer in the world in Walmart, where they are testing a new service that has a Waymo vehicle pick you up and take you to the store to pick up your online orders. I don't know how popular that'll be, but it's something that they're trying out. And just to be a little more specific to Waymo themselves, they've already landed multiple automotive partnerships with giants like Nissan, Fiat Chrysler, Jaguar, Volvo, and more, while also operating their very own robotaxi service in Arizona called Waymo One, which runs through their mobile application just like you would use for ride-hailing services like Uber. So while other giants like Tesla are still talking about a robotaxi service, Waymo is actually out there testing it in the real world as we speak, and it'll likely get much larger over time as it becomes more legalized across the country and around the world. And all of that bodes very well for Google as a business, and I think it'll make their stock even more valuable as well. Don't sleep on what Google is doing here in autonomous driving. I think it's going to be a lot bigger than people realize. But what about Android though? Why am I so big on that too? Well, for starters, Android already commands the most mobile operating system market share in the entire world, even ahead of Apple at over 70% of the entire market, while Apple is only at 27%. So that's like 3/4 of the entire market going straight to Android instead of Apple. And that usually surprises people because we know that iPhones are the primary core business of Apple, and yet despite Google being much more diversified as an overall technology company, it's actually Apple that commands a much higher market cap of over $2 trillion versus Google at only around 1 by comparison. Apple is almost twice as large as Google, despite, again, Google actually having more operating system market share on smartphones and also being much more diversified. That's pretty damn crazy. But the reason for it is because Android is an operating system that mostly runs on third-party phones that are not actually made or sold by Google, like the Samsung Galaxy phones, for example. While on the other hand, Apple not only sells their own really expensive phones with great margins on them because they build them in China, but they also get customers hooked onto their entire ecosystem by selling them various services and accessories that really only work with other Apple products. For example, they sell earphones like the AirPods, they sell the Apple smartwatch, they have the iPad tablet, they have iMac laptops and computers. And when it comes to services, they have all sorts of things like Apple Music, Apple TV, Apple Pay, iCloud services, the list goes on. But the reason why I think Google's Android is being slept on right now is because they're finally starting to realize just how lucrative this market can be, and thus they're finally trying to compete, on a heavy level with Apple directly on virtually everything that Apple does. On the phone side of things, Google has their Pixel line that includes 3 tiers, just like Apple does, with the Pixel A for a budget version, they have the standard Pixel, and then they have the premium Pixel Pro. That's very similar to Apple's offerings like the iPhone SE or the Mini for the kind of smaller budget version. Then Apple also has the standard iPhone, and then they have the iPhone Pro and the iPhone, Max Pro and things like that for the more premium version. And Google also has the Pixel earbuds now, including a Pro version, just like Apple's AirPods. They recently released a Pixel smartwatch earlier this year too, just like the Apple Watch. And there's even rumors of them working on a Pixel tablet to compete with the iPad as well. Not to mention that they're even trying to copy Samsung's success with the Galaxy Fold by working on a foldable Pixel phone of their own as well. And maybe to a lesser degree, they also have Chromebooks to compete with Apple's MacBooks, although those are obviously, the Chromebooks are obviously way cheaper and much lower quality by comparison. But hey, budget devices have a market of their own too, and that's something that I think Apple really struggles with. So Google might as well tap into that market while they still can, at least. But on top of that, Google also has expanded their mobile services with things like Google Pay, YouTube Music, and many more things to come too. I mean, they're even trying to compete with iMessages by adding additional features and functionality to their Google Messages app as a standard across all Android phones. I know it may seem like they're still not a major threat to Apple right now because, Apple is the higher quality, it's more premium. They've got that super loyal fan base that invested so much into the ecosystem already. So, they're not very likely to take on the added costs and hassle of having to switch over to a completely different platform. But when you look at what Android already has, I mean, they've built up a very solid market leadership here thanks to Android being on so many smartphones around the world, especially on cheaper handsets, which is a market that Apple has sort of ignored or not done a very good job of marketing to. Well, Google can really build on that as a foundation and start to implement some of the practices that Apple has done that has made them so successful. And if they do that, I think they are going to have success. And I feel like they're just finally starting to do that now. I feel like they're finally waking up to the opportunity here in the market, and they're finally starting to take it seriously. And when you look at the two different businesses, I mean, did you guys know that Apple generates over $100 billion more in sales than Google? Over $100 billion more, despite Google being the much more diversified company. I mean, I think that's kind of embarrassing, honestly. Like, Google, I think, should be generating way more in sales than Apple when you look at the two companies and everything that they've accomplished and all the different things that they do. But it's just the fact of the matter is that Google has just really been ignoring this opportunity for far too long, and I feel like they're finally now starting to take it seriously. And I think you're going to have to be patient with it. You're going to have to give it some time, but I think it does have the potential to pay off over the long term. So, that's just another reason, just another one of the countless reasons that I think Google stock is a great buy long term. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. Those are my feelings. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say down below. Drop your comments down there. Let me know if you own Google stock. Have you been thinking about Google stock? Do you agree with any of the things I said? Disagree with anything? I'd love to hear your thoughts down there. But thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for all the support. Hope you're all doing well. Now we'll catch you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.